What does the separation of church and state actually mean? Was the United States correct in removing prayer from schools? How much should we support or oppose the Muslim Brotherhood's actions in Egypt? In Georgia, we have a police officer shooting people in their own homes with no-knock warrants. A cop shoots a man in Kroger and the department surrounds him before the GBI are called to investigate. Today we are talking with Rabbi Greg Hirschberg, and we're asking you, are we heading it in the right direction? I'm attorney James W. Davis, and this is It's the Law, Weekend Edition. So Rabbi, all this happening in the world today, what's your take on it? What you got going?
I want to begin, preempt this by saying that I'm not an optimist, and I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. And if I can illustrate, an optimist would say the glass is half full, positive, and a pessimist would say the glass is half empty, negative, and a realist would say the glass has 4 ounces of liquid in it. And I think optimism and pessimism are extremes, and they don't give any solution. It's a mindset, a perspective, but we need a real perspective if we're going to get to the real problem in order to get a solution. There has to be a solution to these problems. And when you ask me to come on, I just, I feel I'm 55. I'm not the old man of the sea, but I'm not, a spring chicken either. And I've been all over the world. You know that. We've done ministry all over the world, and we have ministry all over the world. And I've been to now over 35 countries and 6 continents and half the cities in the United States, and something's radically wrong.
And that's with the world. You're seeing it in the world, not just with the United States.
It's all over, you see, because we're global now. We're very connected. And I look at the world, this is the way I was raised, I was raised by a mom and a dad who were distinctly Jewish. And they know from the Torah, God said, don't treat anybody like an alien because you were aliens in Egypt. So with my parents, there was no race, creed, or color. It was a human being and a heart. And I could tell you, because some people, they live in a bubble. It's not malicious, but they just live in a bubble. When you get out in the world and you go to Africa and you go to India and you go to Australia, you find that people are people. People are people. Skin color and culture does not make a difference. And these hearts are looking for peace. And I think we're living in a time where stress levels and emotional instabilities are an all-time high, for sure.
Yeah, that seems to be what's going on a lot. Now, a lot's going on with racism. A lot's going on with mental health. We got the Obama plan coming into effect. We've got people going to get more and more treatment without having to pay for it, which we talked earlier today about mental health issues and the fact that they're on the rise. But there's also on the rise people getting treated. Everybody's needing to get some sort of treatment for mental health. What's the problem? What's the problem that's leading to this mental health issue?
Well,
from a spiritual perspective.
Let me show you a statistic that I just saw. I think it's interesting. There's a group called SAMHSA, which is an acronym for the Substance and Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. They claim, according to their study, that 45 million Americans, now there's 300 million Americans, so that's 1 in 5 or 20%, which is a huge number, are suffering with mental illness, which they're calling a mental health crisis because, my opinion doesn't matter. My opinion doesn't matter. I'm entitled just like you are and everybody is, but our opinions don't matter. We need to see some facts. We need to see some evidence. So what's more alarming than the fact that there's 20% of people suffering mentally with a mental instability, different levels, obviously. But 62% failed to receive treatment for the illness, which means that 28 million Americans, or 10% of our population, are walking around with mental instabilities that aren't getting treated.
And it wasn't that long ago. I don't think it was the 70s or even 80s where they were starting to release more and more people from mental institutions in order just to put them back on the street. They just decided not to care for them anymore.
I grew up in New York. There was a mental hospital called Bellevue, very well known. They were releasing them on the street and they were living homeless, and some of these folks were incredibly unstable and it was dangerous.
Right.
Very dangerous.
And that's going on. What amount of, in my opinion, there's a lot of problems with mental health issues because people don't have a moral compass. The United States, I believe, lost a moral compass when we started having Supreme Court decisions which overrode certain rights so that some other rights would get there, including abortion, prayer in schools. We started giving rights to small, relatively small groups and taking those in exchange from someone else. So what part of our moral compass that the United States seems to have lost is relevant to how people are treating mental health in their personal lives?
Well,
do you believe there's a connection to those?
I mean, this is all I know. You know, this is all I know. I'm not an economist. I'm not a political activist. I mean, this is what I know. But it's interesting you say about school. I mean, we just celebrated last year the 50th anniversary of prayer being taken out of school. Now, I have to let you know that I'm, you know, you can call me narrow-minded, you can call me right-wing. I don't know what you want to call me, but I'm just a guy who's trying to help. That's how I see myself. I'm just a guy who's trying to help. And I've lived on both sides of the fence. I've lived without God for a very long time. And I've lived with God now for a fair amount of time, 24 years now. And I could just tell you there's a vast difference in my life. There's a vast difference in my marriage. There's a vast difference with my children. Vastly different, because the proof is in the pudding. The National Assessment of Educational Progress says that only 31% of all fourth graders now are proficient in reading. A lot of Americans, I love America, okay? It's the greatest country to live in. It's extreme, but it is the most convenient country, bar none. My father was a World War II vet, so he was missing in action, shot down, a Ranger. You know, we're very nationalistic, and I'm very pro our military, incredibly pro our military, okay? By the same token, though, I think some people in America are living in a vacuum. They're living in an America that was from the 1950s. We're not number one in literacy. 31% of fourth graders are proficient in reading, not to mention all the behavioral issues that teachers have to deal with, as well as the administration. 6/25/1962, this was the final prayer that you were allowed to say in school. Some people think it's benign, but it says, Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon thee. We beg your blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. I think that's beautiful.
Okay. I want you to read that. Read that one more time.
Okay, this was the final prayer that was removed. This was the final prayer removed by the Supreme Court. It's overridden by the Supreme Court, sadly enough. Almighty God. Now, some have a problem with that because when I go to India, there's 1 million gods. So when you say God, which one are you speaking about? Okay, so they didn't even say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is the God of the Christians and the God of the Jews. They even made it a little bit more general because it was already being watered down in school. We acknowledge, we come to the realization, we're admitting to you, we're confessing that we're dependent on you, you're not dependent on us. We need you. We're desperate. So we beg you, not it's coming to us, which is another issue in the United States of America, okay? We beg you, we implore you, we beseech you. Bless us. What does that mean? Today we think prosperity. Give us peace. Give us protection. Look at the shootings in the schools. It's unheard of. Give us protection. Bless us. Give us peace. Not only us as the students, our parents who are our teachers at home, our teachers who are sacrificing, you know, a great salaries and other, you know, modes of careers, and our country. I think that's beautiful, and yet it's kind of a little benign. Removed. Look at what happened in the 60s.
That was too much.
That was too much.
That was too much for the Supreme Court back in the 60s.
And look at what's happened since. You can look statistically, things changed. It's not that God says, okay, knock yourself out. But if I'm on the side of a road and I have a flat tire and you come and I'm struggling, you say, can I help you? I go, I got this thing. I'm just saying, look, I got this thing. And
we'll be back in 30 seconds, and just remembering that the Constitution guarantees that Congress will make no law supporting the establishment of a religion. Not necessarily exclusion from religion.
Nope.
We'll be back in 30 seconds. It's easy to make the mistake of driving after you've had too much to drink. The consequences for this error can be devastating. You may lose your license even before you've gone to court if you do not take action within 10 days of your arrest. Your privilege to drive, insurance rates, and court costs can all be very expensive. I'm attorney James W. Davis. DUI crosses a large section of society. However, don't take it lightly. Contact my office and let us help you put it all in perspective. I'm attorney James W. Davis, and this is It's the Law Weekend Edition, where we're talking to Rabbi Greg Hirschberg. And at the beginning of doing It's the Law, we normally talk about the law of the United States, the law of the world in a secular way. But there is one law that stands above that, I believe, and the United States was founded on, and that's the law that was descended down from Jehovah, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Rabbi, let's continue with what we were talking about prior to the break. Where are we? Where have we gotten to at this point?
You know, I think we're in a rough place. I mean, I talk to people around the world and They're very frustrated, believers and non-believers. I mean, secular humanists are frustrated. They feel like things are going in a really bad direction, and their hands are tied. There's unrest everywhere. There's political upheavals. Economies are falling apart. I mean, I was in Argentina years ago, and I got there when the 7th largest economy in the world fell apart. And you had millionaires living in the gutter.
All right.
Homeless. I observed this. It was incredible. And can it happen here? Of course it can happen here. You know, sadly enough, I love America, but sometimes we're under this mindset, not here. You know, just like people said, not in my house, but...
People said that. I had people in my office with real estate closings, a real estate agent, actually months before, actually in 2008 before the crisis really hit, while I was trying to explain to a client that how their mortgage went, the real estate agent said land prices always go up, real estate always goes up. And I said, well, it doesn't always go up. It doesn't have to go up.
That was the theory.
Yes. And they said, well, historically. I said, that's true historically. It has gone up. But there's problems with it. Things that we were doing as a nation, we were decreasing interest rates, which made the price of houses go up, but the actual cost of buying a house go down. So we were actually going down in house prices when you look at how much you had to pay to live in a house for years before the actual crash went down where the actual price had to
Let's
fall.
dovetail with that. Now, I'm not an economist, but I want to talk about responsibility. Because if you give somebody a mortgage with no money down, where is the risk? Do you know all the people out there that are investing in mutual funds? The mutual fund managers, there's no risk.
None at all.
There are fees and hidden fees whether you make money or not. You're giving them all your money and you're assuming all the risk. Think about that.
And it's called fiduciary. It's where you put your money in somebody's
And you
trust.
trust them.
You trust them to do it while they're sitting there. And it's the same thing. I got into air traffic control at 21, 22 years old, and I started investing in a 401k. That was a very new thing back in 1986, 1987. Everybody and his brother investing was a new thing. Stocks, there wasn't a lot more stocks to invest in, but the prices went up because so many people were putting money into it. So there was a lot of concern. The stock companies, the companies that had this stock, started not caring whether or not they made a profit. Nobody looked at that anymore.
Paper profits, it looks good just like our market is over 15,000, but you know what? When I bought my first mortgage when I graduated college in 1980, I had to put 25% down. Do you think I'm going to run away from that house knowing that I put 25% of the value down and there's equity built up? You've got to have somebody, you've got to hold their feet to the fire a little bit. And you know what? I understand that we have rights. I love our Constitution. I love our Bill of Rights. We have more rights than any other country in the universe. But you know what the problem is? What about the responsibilities? We always talk about rights. We always, and you know, when my grandparents came through Ellis Island, they were going to add value to America. I know we've always received the poor, the tired, the weak, the immigrant. Of course, that's what we're about. We give people a shot. It's a wonderful country, but they came in and they couldn't wait to become a citizen. They couldn't wait to become a citizen.
Give people opportunities that other people didn't have, that you couldn't get in any other country.
Well, if you work hard, it still does. If you work hard.
And that's why we have the illegal immigration population, because they know we still give them the best thing. We still give them the best deal. And generally, they take jobs that the people in the United States have become too lazy or disinterested in working. And that's,
maybe so, but the point is that there's an avenue to succeed. I was raised in the projects. We were poor. We were subsidized. We were living in a low-income housing project that's government subsidized. I had public education, which we still had. So I went to school. And my father and mother explained to me, there's no way for you to do well unless you get a good education. This is the key, the door to open up the door of success for you. So, and then I got a Scholastic Scholarship to college. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying it was available to anyone.
Right.
And it still is. I love school teachers. My mother's a retired school teacher.
And
I have such respect for them.
Totally disinterested, particularly in Macon. Macon's a Macon area. If you look at the youth, primarily the males in Macon, have a lot of trouble getting interested past the 9th grade.
You know,
what's going on with that?
I think it's across the board, though. I understand it's a problem in Macon, but I really think it's across the board, Jay, and I'll tell you why. Because people want a quick fix. They want a quick answer. You know, we could fix the economy, but we'd all have to sacrifice. It would take 5 to 7 years if we all sacrificed part of our pension, but this is what happened. The Bible predicts it. Through arrogance and selfish ambition and through focusing on self, and we sacrifice community, we're all suffering. We've shot ourselves in the foot. Look, I just find this interesting. The National Sleep Foundation, highly regarded, 2012 study, the number of people in the United States who have a chronic sleep disorder are 40 million. The estimated cost in lost productivity for the United States is $18 billion. The percentage of American adults experiencing a sleep problem right now is 62%. The Bible says that if you follow God's ways, he says, happy is the person who finds wisdom, God's laws, the person who acquires knowledge. He profits greater than silver or gaining gold. It's more precious than pearls. Nothing you want can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. Her ways are pleasantness. Her paths are peace. She is a tree of life, and those who hold fast to her are made happy. Then you will walk securely. And when you lie down, you won't be afraid. And when you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Well, obviously, it's not sweet. I don't go to convenience stores, but the couple of times I go, every week they seem to come out with a new energy drink. There's a message here. People are stressed out of their minds. They're living with a stress level that is hard to deal with, and it affects, if you're stressed your neck. I'm not a physician, but I have friends that are surgeons. They say the American Medical Association says 50% of all disease, cancers. We're all pre-cancerous are brought on. You want to know a study on cancer? The World Health Organization, 12.6 million people are diagnosed, and it's on the rise. 7.5 million die annually, and we're pouring in billions into research. Do I think we should? But if a kid gets an ear infection every week, you don't keep giving them antibiotics. There's a problem with the immune system. You attack it at its root. Mm-hmm. This is what I feel.
And that's what this is another issue, but Western medicine has for a long time treated symptoms. And that's what we're doing, I believe, what the government's doing.
Absolutely.
It's across the board with the way we deal with something. We don't treat a problem. We treat a bunch of symptoms, and we mask the symptoms for a period of time, and ultimately it will catch up with it.
If a person is in a bar and they're intoxicated, inebriated, and they get into a fight, they don't feel the punches, but the next day they do. We have had a party in this nation, and we're experiencing a financial hangover.
We live in Macon, Georgia, one of the cities with the biggest per capita amount of churches. Somehow or another, we're still losing it spiritually. I'm going to ask the rabbi what he has to say about that when we come back. 30 seconds. There's never been a time when more people were struggling with debt. If you find yourself under pressure with potential foreclosure, repossession of your car, or phone calls from creditors that you just can't pay, then you need to know your rights. I'm attorney James W. Davis. We can assess your situation and help you decide whether a bankruptcy or other debt relief may be your answer. Debt relief consultations are free. Come see us and know your rights.
James W. Davis and Associates, attorneys at law.
I'm attorney James W. Davis, and this is It's the Law Weekend Edition, where we're talking about what's going on in Macon, particularly with all the churches, more per capita than most any place in the nation, actually. And Rabbi, it's a little bit unusual to be calling somebody a rabbi and talking about churches. Can you explain a little bit about what your position is?
It's kind of complex, and yet it's very simple, which I think is a paradox. But I'll give you the simple because I'm a simple person. I'm a Jewish person by birth, and I still am Jewish by identity because I am. I'm just Jewish. I mean, that's who I am. But I absolutely believe that Yeshua, as I call him by his Hebrew name, but Jesus is the Messiah. And he's the King of Israel, the King of the Jews. That's what he's called in the New Testament. There's this big wall between the old and the new. For years, it's been like, people say they're New Testament believers. No, if you're a Christian, you're a Bible believer. You're a Bible believer, and you're under the new covenant. The New Testament is a fulfillment of that covenant, but yet the Bible is the whole 31,102 sentences. Let me put it to you this way. Okay, here I am in the middle, and I've got the Jewish community holding onto my hand and the Christian community holding onto my hand, and they're pulling. And this is what the Jewish community says. Listen, Greg, if you want to be Jewish, just let go of the Jesus thing. You got to let go of him because he's not the Messiah. So and you can come back to this camp. And the Christians, who I feel much closer to be perfectly frank, they kind of say, and forgive me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean to be difficult at all, but they kind of say, if you would just let go of the Jewish stuff, then you could join our camp. And what they don't realize is I'm here as they're pulling me, trying to pull them together, because I think that they have a right to be Jewish according to the Bible and believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and they have a right to be grafted into Israel according to Romans 11. And celebrate the festivals of Israel and be part of that commonwealth according to the New Testament. So as they're pulling me apart, I'm trying to pull them together.
How's that working for you?
I feel like I've dislocated my shoulders. I feel like Stretch Cunningham. I mean, how is it working? Not kind of as good as I hope, but you know, we started, somebody picked us up, and now our messages are in 196 countries, which is flabbergasting. It's shocking because most of these countries that I hear from, I don't even know how to pronounce. You know, I'm not geographically sound, so it's amazing to me through this internet, that we have this ability, because usually I'd have to go personally. I think people are getting it though, because I think God is sending a revelation, because I think, and this is just my opinion, and it doesn't count, I think we're in the last days. I think we're in the last days, and the prophet Daniel said, this is how you'll know. Knowledge will increase, but in the Hebrew it means people will be speaking about the last days. Now, you've been a Christian a good long time. People in the 70s didn't speak about the last days, and those that did, everybody thought they were cuckoo. Now, everybody's speaking about the last days.
There was this new world coming, that it was rapture and it could happen any moment. In the 70s, I mean, there were people in the 70s they were hollering, I think it's going to happen before 1980 hit. So there were a few people going on there.
But they were weird. Now, everybody's talking about it. In fact, Hollywood's talking about it. Every other movie's apocalyptic.
Right.
And people saying, are we in the last? People are looking for answers. They're just looking in the wrong places as far as I'm concerned. Listen to what the great, well, we call him Rabbi Saul, Shaul.
Tell us what rabbi means, because some people are a little
Rabbi's
confused.
Teacher. And I know it says in Matthew 23, I don't want to get too theological because we don't have time for that, but it says don't call anybody rabbi, don't call anybody father. Well, we call our dads father, and and it says there was some to be rabbis according to Ephesians 4. What Yeshua, what Jesus was saying in context is crucial. If you take text out of context, it's pretext, it's a lie. And we do this all the time. We take a verse and then we speak about it for 45 minutes. It's inappropriate. Hermeneutically, and to interpret the Bible, you cannot do that.
This is what it just sort of brings to me, the thought that I wanted to go into next. Don't call anybody rabbi, don't call anybody teacher. I'm not sure theologically what all that means, but it goes to my next question. That is a part of why I believe there's a lot of churches here and no spiritual growth, or no visible spiritual growth that you can see as a whole in this church being more, or in this city being more so than other cities with less churches, is that people look to people for answers. They look to other people for answers rather than to become spiritually aware and to address God and to search the scriptures themselves to find what God wants for their lives.
Okay.
We have this preconceived notion, in my opinion, I'll give you a minute to address it. I believe people go into a church prior to being Christian or anything else, and they have this preconceived idea of what that means. It means I'm not going to smoke when I get out. It means I'm not going to drink when I get out. It means I'm going to stop cussing, and I'm going to stop doing all these other things. It means a lot of no's. It means a lot of don'ts. That's their preconceived notion. And when they get to the church, I don't see that they're taught anything different. They're just, a lot of churches say, come down here, let us get you marked so that you're covered for the rest, so you're covered after you die. Not even for the rest of your life. It actually, like, salvation begins after you die, rather than you become a part of it in the moment. And I think that people have lost by looking to other people to be their guidance, looking at a pastor or an evangelist or somebody, rather than trying to seek out God for themselves and really honestly discern truth.
Listen,
are you with me on that?
I am. I'm tracking you. It's a good point. I think I have a lot of friends all over the world who are sacrificing their life. We have started orphanages. We have started schools. We started an orphanage in the biggest slum in the world in Kenya. There's 1 million people. I lived there for a week. I mean, just a week. You couldn't. It's unbelievable. Pictures don't. It's unbelievable, and it's incredibly sad.
And I've heard you say what I've observed. I've gone to different places with a Spanish-speaking Baptist group that I really enjoy, and Pastor Fochester is the pastor there. I love him to death. But we went to Peru for one example, and we had these people with such loving hearts, such earnestly seeking Jesus and his teachings, and to live right and according to those things, and having a sense of wanting life to be right and according to those teachings. And a lot of people there, as we go and minister, a lot of people who go there to minister feel sorry for them and sort of want to give them a little of the Western life, take them out to dinner and stuff like that.
It's not what they need.
And I feel like we need to bring that back to the United States. And I look at that and I say, you know what? This little town, they don't need what I can offer. Macon is a place where I look back and I see the corruption and the evil and the spiritual darkness. And I say, you know what? If you want to find yourself as a missionary in some place, look where you are. Look where you are and see what's there, because going over to these other countries, sometimes they already have a more earnest desire.
I could tell you what they have as believers. They're totally content. Now, we've hit on a lot of subjects. Let me say this. There are a lot of wonderful pastors in Macon. There are a lot of wonderful churches in Macon. There are a lot of people trying to do things. There's just not a cohesion. The Bible says, Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Translation from Hebrew, how good and blessed it is when brethren dwell together in unity. It's like the dew on Mount Hermon. It's like the oil running down. It's life. It's rich. We know just in a marriage, if two parents are at odds, the kids are dysfunctional. We know that two are better than one, and a cord of three isn't easily broken. We know this. When special interest groups want to get a law passed, what do? They unify. It doesn't matter if they're black or white, rich or poor, educated, not so educated. It doesn't matter. They unify. This is the dysfunction I see in the believing community. I wish there was more unity. I wish we could put down our own agendas and pick up God's. That's Matthew 23. Jesus said to the disciples, hey, Peter, don't let anybody call you rabbi. Not the name, because we know that Paul was a teacher. Rabbi means teacher. What he was saying is, don't you start your own academy, Andrew. Don't you start your own school, Peter. You teach them exactly what I taught them. And this is all we do. You know that bracelet? For years I saw this rubber bracelet that people were wearing, WWJD. Mm-hmm. What would Jesus do? I always question that, because I can't tell you what he'd do exactly in some situations. I always wanted the bracelet that would have said, what did Jesus do? Why don't we just do what he did? And he was a lover, and he was compassionate, and he cared, and he was moved by that. And that's the way we used to be in America. That's the way we were. We were content with what we had. We thank God for everything, and we look to help our neighbor. If we don't get back to that, there's going to be no recovery.
And Rabbi, as we're finishing up here, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about, I've been saying that Macon particularly is a mission field. What's Beth Yeshua doing in the community here? Can you tell us a little about that?
Interestingly enough, our ministry is a worldwide teaching ministry. It just flourished that way. I didn't know. God told me to come here. I didn't know I didn't have a vision. Sadly enough, I didn't have a vision. My vision was to do what God wanted. So we're in 196 countries now, and I get letters from all over the world. But I felt we have to do something locally. So we started this ministry called Elias, and we're downtown in East Macon, and a beautiful little sweet, gorgeous couple lives down there because they said, shouldn't we live down there? You know, isn't this a mission field? We think mission, we think Africa, India. Yes, go into the whole world, but Macon is part of the world. And what we're seeing is, through an incredible level of love, young people's hearts are being changed. It's absolutely astounding to me how love could make you change your ways. And so we do this. We have 40 children. They live down there. We feed them on Thursdays. If you want to get involved in it or know more about that ministry or other ministries we have, the website, www.betheshuainternational.com. I mean, there's a lot of free teachings. You know, we don't charge for those things. I mean, just feel free to go at it.
Remember, nothing in this program is designed to be legal advice. If you have a legal concern, you should consult an attorney.